All right. Hello, Patricia Cornwell, and everyone listening in. This is Tom Marshburn. I am a crew member aboard the International Space Station currently, as we're talking. I'm participating in Expedition 66. Arrived here on a SpaceX Dragon approximately 5 weeks ago, I believe, beginning a 6-month mission. And it's wonderful to be able to talk to you. I'm also a graduate from Davidson College, as is Patricia. And so really looking forward to talking to you, Patricia, and answering any questions and having a great discussion today.
Well, first of all, let me say that you must be the most phenomenal physician that I have ever met in fiction and real life. You're a space doctor. And I have to ask you this now. When we were roaming that small campus of Davidson College outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, long ago and far away, did you ever think that you'd be doing what you're doing right now?
I knew that I wanted to be doing this, but I'd never thought that I actually could. I've been in love to space since I was a little kid. At Davidson, I was thinking, I majored in physics because I wanted to work in the space program someday, and I went to graduate school in engineering. Of course, I wanted to fly to space, but no, I never thought it would happen. It was only in my dreams.
So what would you tell somebody who comes to you, and I bet you get this all the time, what would you tell a young person today who has that same dream, and maybe they want to go to Mars, or they want to go on some far-flung mission, or what would you say, what is the key to your being able to do this? How did you make this happen?
Well, I would say, and I would ask you the same question as well, as a internationally best-selling author. I'm sure you have many writers coming to you. What I have gleaned from other astronauts, what they've talked about, is whatever it is somebody wants to be, they should start right now. And I believe it's true of writing as well. If you want to be a writer, well, you need to start writing. If you want to be an astronaut, well, go ahead and get involved in your studies, take care of your body. But you need to really start being, if you want to be an astronaut, start being that today. And I would say most, if not all, astronauts got to where they were, got up into space, because they were doing just that mostly their entire lives. They were preparing their entire lives for this. The one thing that's wonderful about, probably about writing, but certainly about being an astronaut as well, is that if you don't end up flying in space, you've got this wonderful job. You've got some sports that you love, hobbies that you love. And so it's a wonderful life just getting ready for a space flight, even if you don't end up becoming an astronaut.
Well, you know, I think the big thing that astronauts and writers have in common is that if you're going to do it like you mean it, and if you're going to do it in a stellar way, it's all about exploration. I mean, you know, we call it research, or you could call it homework, and all the things that you've had to learn, including speaking Russian, which I don't know how on earth you've managed that, and everything else you've had to learn. But it's having a seeking mind and exploring. I mean, that's what NASA's all about, is exploration. And I believe that the arts are the same. We should be exploring the world, the universe around us, and figuring out ways to communicate it to others and understanding the meaning.
I agree completely. If I were to say what is one characteristic of all astronauts, because we're very diverse, there's no two alike by any means, but the one way we're all alike is that we're very, very curious. We fall in love with a subject, and we want to find out more and more. It certainly was true for me, and I imagine it's got to be true from writing and from reading your works, that you must have been intensely curious about your subject, if not actually fell in love with the subject, in order to pull that off. So I would agree with you. That's an absolutely essential characteristic for exploration. You know, we're doing research up here in the space station, and we have so many racks, so many modules. We're dedicated to research. It's what we spend most of our time doing. And that is exploration as well, an exploration of the mind and of a very small world, very small universe that we don't at all understand here in microgravity. So in all those ways, that's all exploration. I've seen some of your videos of how you prepare for writing a book. And boy, that sounds like a lot of fun. But I know it's hard work, and you certainly seem to love it. And you were exploring as well.
Well, yes, I have done an awful lot of hard work for sure, but I have to say, this makes me laugh because I'm looking at you right now. Now, maybe you have your foot in one of those toe loops that you're holding yourself, but I see that's the problem. Now, I have been on the Argos at Johnson Space Center. You know, they call it human in the loop. I call it dummy in the loop when it's me, and I know how hard that is. I know how hard that is what you're doing right now. Even if you're a scuba diver, it's really hard to float like you are and not be banging all over the place.
Well, you're absolutely right. This is my second long-duration flight, and I would have thought I would have been better than I was when I got here, but it's like being born again in some ways, that you have to learn how to do everything, put on your clothes, brush your teeth, stabilize yourself. And it's an ongoing process, so that your process of work throughout the day becomes just a series of like 10,000 problems. Because you're right, your feet will slip out, and you'll start to spin around. You look like a baby deer on ice. And I would say after 5 weeks, I'm still learning the finer details of how to stabilize so you can become efficient. The Argos, though, hanging on that pendulum, that's in 2 dimensions. It's really good in that plane that you're in. And sometimes 3 dimensions. I think it's pretty good for the reaction forces. If you start to work on something, you'll start to push away from it. So what was your impression on that? Did you enjoy it?
It was stressful. Okay, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was stressful. I'll be honest. I mean, it's so difficult because, look, you know, when you scuba dive, and if you're reaching for the ladder, okay, and you're underwater, and I know you've been down in Nemo and you know far more about this than I do, but there's some friction because you can move, but when you're where you are, particularly if you're out in the vacuum, but if you fall short of grabbing that handrail, you can swim till the cows come home and you're not going anywhere. And that is a very strange feeling, that you literally are lost in space. And of course, I went all the way up to the ceiling, and in Johnson Space Center, that's pretty high up. They had to put a dog leash on me because I kept floating away. I said, I'll keep my day job.
Oh, and you're right. It's the swimming motions don't help, and yet that's what humans usually try to do when they first arrive. Start kicking their feet, which is generally speaking a bad idea in the space station, but you learn over time to not do that. But speaking of tall buildings, I did have a spacewalk yesterday. Oh. Just came in from that last night, and part of the spacewalk I was riding the end of the robotic arm, so I was doing a sort of a windshield wiper move, taking me from one part of the space station, moving me to another. So I was about 60 feet up above the space station, looking down on it. And very much had that feeling. It was so gorgeous, so beautiful, but at the same time so thrilling that I almost didn't want to look down, almost like looking over the edge of a building and looking at the ground. But and I think in order for you to do what you do in your research and for us to do this job, we have to be not only willing to accept it, but kind of enjoy it. Enjoy the excitement that goes in preparing for it, but also and just trying to get the job done while you're in the middle of it. And, of course, the real joy comes afterwards talking about it.
Well, I would assume that anybody that wants to do what you do, you must have a huge sense of wonder. Would you say that's true? Wonder and awe,
yes. And absolutely, wonder, awe, and humility, all at the same time. They seem very tiny, but also at the same time very special. Even if I think that statistically we're probably not alone in the universe, but even if we are, it's it makes us very special either way.
I agree with that. We're very special either way. I'd like to believe we're not alone in this big, amazing, huge universe that gets bigger You know what's weird now? This when we were coming along, I mean, you knew about your own solar system, and that was about it. And now, with these amazing telescopes and all these things, and we know so much more. That are so many other planets out there, and so statistically, you start thinking. It opens your mind, and this has been the best thing. The research I've done with NASA has been one of the best gifts I've ever had in my life, because it's caused me to think differently about everything. And what happens is, when you really start looking at the science, it becomes so much more exciting, because you really start understanding how things work the way they do. Like right now, where you are with no gravity, or microgravity, which is next to no gravity, I guess. A hard thing for a lot of people to understand is the difference between weight and mass. Like, you have no weight right now, but you still have your same mass. And I figured that out the hard way in the zero gravity plane, when I was weightless, but I banged into the side. And I go, okay, I may be weightless, but I sure as heck still have mass, because I felt that. Can you explain that a little bit? You're a physicist, you understand this.
Boy, I'll try to. Weight is the measurement of mass that we get when we can experience a gravity field. Mm-hmm. So right now I am weightless, as you said, but I have mass, and that's because I'm falling. I'm falling around the Earth in orbit. If the space station were to come down and touch onto the surface of the Earth would stop us from moving, and then the gravity would be pulling us down into the surface of the Earth, and we'd feel it. We could measure it with a scale, and we would have weight. So that's the way I do it, way I would describe it. However, I agree with you in floating around here. If you try to stop yourself with one hand and a wrist, you can so easily tumble over, because of the mass you still have, and one wrist will not control you. Even though you do feel very light, it's a wonderful feeling to fly through the space station and just kind of hang out with your friends sometimes. And so this seems like it's very easy, but you end up working out your arms and your legs quite a bit, trying to stabilize and stop yourself from moving, and learning how to not start moving too fast.
And then you have the terrible letdown when you come back to terra firma down here, where in the gravity gutter of our solar system where Earth is. So you come back down and you want to float to the breakfast table. You want to just let your water bottle sit right there, and your pen and your microphone, and I bet you have a lot of little mishaps for a while.
Well, you do, and my wife gave me a little plastic cup for all my drinks, coffee, anything, because she was afraid I'd let go of it, just thinking, well, I'm going to finish my coffee and just put it off to the side here, which you get used to doing up in space, because there's no place to put it otherwise, except maybe Velcro on the wall. And it is true, I haven't dropped anything when I came back, but I've come close, and it's true that some astronauts have just let go of something, let it drop and break on the floor. In particular, though, when we try to throw something to a friend, when we're back on the Earth, we try to push it out in a straight line like we do here, and just miserably fall short of the other side. What's interesting also is when I came back last time at night, when my eyes couldn't see anything, I was lying in bed, and my brain could only interpret that sensation of being pressed against a wall as being I must be getting sucked up against a vent. So I felt like I was on a wall, like a fly stuck on a vent on the side there, because my body could only interpret it that way when it was dark and my eyes were closed.
Yes.
But you're right, it's tough coming home.
And then another little factoid about something, I believe I'm correct about this. Again, when you're in microgravity, when you're exhaling your carbon dioxide, it would gather around your head if you don't have fans blowing the air around. And so that could be very dangerous. Isn't that sort of, I believe that's what I've heard.
Yeah, you've obviously done your research. That's right. One of the sounds of a space station in any spaceship that we'll ever have, I imagine, is fans going, for that very reason, to make sure we don't get a carbon dioxide bubble around our heads. You can feel it, especially when you're exercising. The heat starts to build. It might be some carbon dioxide, but it's mostly the heat and the sweat, because it's just to form a sphere around your head. And so you can get quite hot. You need a fan to blow the heat off of your face, because otherwise it's just not going to happen. You lose, because there's no effects of gravity, you're going to lose buoyancy, so the CO2 doesn't rise off of you as it does on the Earth. And, of course, no wind other than the fans, which are life-saving. If a spacecraft ever became completely quiet, that would be a very frightening thing, because we would know that we had lost our fans, and we're going to need to get the CO2 away.
That's like that Far Side cartoon where the person walks by and, unplugs the thing in the life support room. So we don't want our fans unplugged up there, so to speak. But and another interesting thing is what fluids do up there. And, of course, I'm talking about, now if anybody's going to be the guru on space forensics, it would be you. As a doctor and a physicist, because fluids, like with your little bag of water with that lovely straw with the little cap on it, so whether you're talking about water or blood, it's totally different up there, isn't it? In fact, it is kind of creepy. Yeah, like ectoplasm. And it kind of just follow the surface of your...
The demonstration is usually a disaster. I usually have a hard time keeping that from going up my nose. But you're right, the surface tension of the bubbles will completely keep it into this very loosely formed amoeboid shape. But as you saw, it can actually scatter really easily, too. I have seen blood in space before, and it is very viscous. It's actually a little easier to control it in space, I believe, just because a loose weave gauze will just hang on to it and suck it in very quickly. So as long as it's not under high pressure, then I believe you can contain it pretty well.
Well, now, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I would assume with the plans of more and more people going into space, including civilians, the habitats on the moon, and I want a little condo and a little lava tube up there if you have any extra ones, okay? But what physicians medically, how you're going to deal with people, this must be becoming a very big priority with NASA, and I mean, and that's what you're doing. Can you tell us some of the research you're doing up there?
Yeah, sure, especially on the medical area. It's got to be lightweight. Whatever you use for diagnosis and treatment, it's got to be lightweight. It's got to require almost no power or very little power. Not a lot of trash. No experts other than the individual that happens to be on the space station. We do have remote guidance from experts on the ground, which we would absolutely need. So I think NASA's done a wonderful job. I used to be a flight surgeon. The flight surgeon cadre today does a wonderful job of figuring out these problems. We think through really complex ones and kind of devastating medical conditions. Fortunately, we haven't had any of those on the space station, but we've had some medical issues. So we have ultrasound devices. We have a lot of the things that you would expect maybe in a military medevac kit. We have that. But we have, if we had to do surgery, I imagine we'd probably be doing sort of invasive radiology techniques, using ultrasound and needles to drain an abscess, like instead of trying to actually take out an appendix if we had to do an appendectomy. So we've thought through a lot of those things. Ultrasound has been the focus of much of the research that I've had an opportunity to participate in, figuring out what is the capability of a interested, smart, but minimally trained ultrasound individual, and getting some ideas about how to run it, but then getting all their information from the ground when they're actually trying to do a good ultrasound examination on an individual. That's been exciting to do that. Find out that we're actually quite good at it, and some of that research has benefited medicine as well on the ground, because it enables physicians to bring diagnostic imaging using ultrasound to remote areas. You don't necessarily need ultrasonography. If you have one, that's the best, but if you don't have one, then you can actually do quite well with the ultrasound images, diagnosing even like fractures and eye injuries. It's not just about the abdomen, for instance.
Yes, it'd be a little bit hard, a little difficult to have an MRI scanner or a CT up there. Now, even I think even maybe to make itty little bitty ones, maybe, but I think even Captain Kirk didn't have that, did he? So, yeah, that's so. What I think is so cool, and I know a little bit about your medical kit that you know that's in the I think it's in a floor locker or something in one of your areas, is you learn to be so resourceful if you're an astronaut. If you think about it, you're kind of goes back to the days of Robinson Crusoe. Like, you are the pilot of this mission, right? But you're also a physician and a physicist, and you probably could build a treehouse while you're at it because you're an engineer. What that means is we need to get back to being where if they throw us on the moon or someplace, we can survive and that we can adapt and not always have our fancy little iPhone to tell us what to do. But have you felt that with your training that this has been a big emphasis, is learning to be resourceful?
Absolutely, and the people that are selected for the astronaut office are to work as astronauts are picked for that. They want to pick someone who is very good in a technical field, but also has a wide breadth of interests and education. And what we call operational experience. I'm sure you've heard that word before in your research and your time at NASA, and that is people who have actually gone out in the field and done things and had to show and demonstrate their ability to think on their feet and use the resources they have in hand. In a lot of ways, I'd like to think Davidson prepared me for that. I think Davidson is full of Renaissance people, and you're a Renaissance person yourself in many ways, I believe. Because you've delved into science and engineering, you know so much about it, even though I believe you started off as an artist, if I'm not wrong. Could you talk about how you transitioned, or were you always that way and never transitioned?
You are so, you flatter me. Listen, when I was at Davidson and you were at Davidson, you took all those harder classes like physics. I took chemistry, and after like 3 days fled from the lab because I had no idea what was going on. I took astronomy, Dr. Manning, and I did okay with it, but I could never get to relativity math problems because I can't do math. But yes, I was an English major, So I thought science didn't apply to me, and then as I started seeing how you could use it to solve crimes and how you could use it in archaeology, and then I see what you can do with it in space, and science is how. This is how you look under the hood, baby, and see what life's all about and what we're supposed to do with it. But I know you don't have much time because you're whizzing very fast out there at 17,500 miles an hour. But I got to ask you this. When you first saw that view, when you first went up in a rocket or the space shuttle, when you first saw that and you were there and it was real, can you describe what that felt like for you?
It was far beyond any photograph or video I'd seen before. So for me, my brain was just trying to take it in. And I think for the rest of my life, I will continue to try to process these images that my eyes have seen. So it was certainly breathtaking and beautiful. The Earth was much brighter than I expected. The reflection of the sunlight off of the Earth surprised me quite a bit, and so I wanted to go get the sunglasses. What also surprised me was that I didn't have any idea where I was. I saw white, and I said, I think that's clouds, or is that snow? I don't know. And how little I knew about the shape and the form of the landforms of my own planet was a little bit unnerving, actually. But definitely I guess I'll spend the rest of my life trying to put into words. I wish I had your skills, and so that I could do a good job of explaining it. You do, over time, in long-duration spaceflight, get a feeling that you fall in love with your planet again. You get to where you recognize landforms by the way they look, and you know which continent and maybe even what country it is by either a coastline or just by the color of the soil. So in a way, you get to know the Earth as a way that an alien might if they were to arrive here for the first time. And see the Caribbean Sea, everyone says, is gorgeous. The Middle East at night is breathtaking. Every continent has its own special jewels, if you will, that we love to look at. But Patricia, I did want to ask, do you know what the the most favorite place on Earth is for every astronaut and cosmonaut?
Pizza Hut. No.
That's probably number two. But number one, we all agree. Number one, we all agree, is our hometown.
Oh, cool.
It's seeing the Earth from space ultimately makes you want to go back. We came from this Earth, and that is our home, and you feel that very much up here. We could talk another hour about the challenges that are going to be before the future astronauts that are going to go to Mars for 3 years and not be able to talk to people immediately because they're too far away and light can't travel fast enough for a real-time conversation. So that's worth a whole other conversation.
But you know, the way technologies are advancing, I'm hopeful that we're going to figure out ways to really expedite some of these problems. So it's something that would be 8 months to get somewhere. There's a propulsion system that will make it easier or quicker. And there, I mean, I've just what little research I've done, and I only know a teeny tiny bit compared to someone like you. I've been astonished at what's being done already, and I hope that people will want to support this kind of advancement because it is our future, it is our survival. And I don't know, it's a funny thing. Something about space, it's addictive. Once you start getting into it, it sort of loves you back and it won't let you go.
That's a wonderful way to put it. I agree. And one thing, when I talk about NASA research or research on the space station, funding that kind of research does more than just provide money for the work to be done, which could go to the National Science Foundation or somewhere else. But when the whole idea is to explore the stars, it is unbelievable the amount of work and the great ideas that people come up with just because of that mission statement. Just that in itself motivates human beings far beyond what they would otherwise. So I believe in the research going on up here, and I agree with you completely. And as has been famously said in the past, that a single planet species is doomed to extinction someday, and I think these days we might be realizing that more and more. So I'm all for the kind of work we're able to do up here.
Well, I want to thank you for what you've done, because as much as this may have been your dream, and I think you and I would tell everybody, work hard, dream big, right? But I know how hard you've worked to be where you are today, and I know what you've done to further medicine, space medicine, and when you get back down on the ground and maybe have a moment, I'd love to talk to you more about space medicine, and I think Scarpetta might could learn a thing or two from you.
I would love that. And it's in its nascent stages. We're just taking our first footsteps in that new world of medicine and pretty much everything else in this incredible environment here. But I would love that. And you and I have traded emails, and now I can hear your voice, and you can see me and hear my voice. So I'd love to meet you face to face and do exactly that someday.
Well, thank you. This has been, I've never done this before. You're the first person I've talked to in space and looked at like this. This is, I don't know what to say. This is quite a treat beyond belief. Thank you for this. Now, I would try to do the same thing, but it would not be very pretty. As well. Now, you see, now that was impressive. That's the Cirque du Soleil in the universe.
Well, it was still only 5 weeks back up here move. I was going to try to stick it on the first try, but I didn't make it. But and the same to you with your what you've brought to your readers and to everyone. Just very many people, including me, admire your work greatly. I have written before, just medical textbooks and chapters, and as writing is very, very hard work. There's no doubt about it.
It is hard work, but when you get back down on the ground and you decide to do that, I know someone who can give you a few little pointers about it. I mean, it's just like anything else, you have to go learn. And there are ways to do that. You might be a whole lot better at it than you think you are.
Well, I'd love to if I felt like people wanted to hear another astronaut story, and understanding that reading can be hard work too, so it's got to be good. Then perhaps give it a try. I think every astronaut would love to give it a try sometime.
Well, I'll look forward to that. But again, thank you for giving me your time, and I will look forward to what's next, and I'll be watching you.
Well, thank you very much for your time as well, and for doing most of the work to set up this conversation. It's been wonderful to talk to you and talk a little bit about Davidson, and I'm very proud of where it came from, and I know you are too. So look forward to talking to you on the Earth someday.
I look forward to that soon. And Godspeed up there.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too.